In eastern California, Death Valley is known as one of the hottest and most inhospitable places on planet Earth. In this region, for centuries, legends have been told of an underground city, one that is massive, spanning miles, and housing vast amounts of treasure. In today's episode, we will explore accounts of this elusive subterranean city and whether it could exist. On the surface, it seems completely illogical and implausible that any civilization would choose to inhabit this region. But we know several have, and this region has been inhabited for thousands of years by tribes such as the Timbisha and the Northern Paiute. Several Californians, as well as Native American tribes, have recalled visiting this remarkable subterranean city. The Paiute tribe for centuries has called this city Shin-au-av, which translates to Ghostland. While the Paiute get credit for naming this mysterious city, there are three other fascinating accounts from people who allegedly mistakenly found the caves. The first comes from Dr. F. Bruce Russell. This account was told to a man named Howard E. Hill of Los Angeles. Dr. Russell, a retired physician, was said to have discovered a series of complex tunnels deep below Death Valley in 1931. He, along with Dr. Daniel S. Bovie, a former archaeologist, accidentally found these caves when digging. According to Russell, he was sinking a shaft in a mining operation when the soil gave way and he fell into a cave. There, the men would find catacombs of tunnels leading in all sorts of different directions. As Russell and Bovie began walking through the tunnels, they were astonished to find three massive skeletons of men. Russell stated that the giants were around 8 to 9 feet tall. The skeletons appeared to have clothing, possibly from something like sheepskin. Russell did note the animal skin didn't appear to be anything alive today. There were several artifacts in the room that resembled possibly Egyptian, as the men saw something similar to hieroglyphs carved in the wall. The two men believed they found the burial place of the tribe's hierarchy as well. In this room they found artifacts and the bones of animals such as elephants, tigers, and possibly saber-toothed tigers. Russell stated that he and Bovie had only explored some of the tunnels, and that they estimated about 180 miles of these tunnels existed in Death Valley, and that these catacombs stretched all the way into southern Nevada. As fascinating as their story was, the archaeology community did not believe them and had no interest in the matter. Despite this, Dr. Russell did find a group of investors willing to finance their dig. However, Russell could not find his way back to the mine shaft, nor the underground city. Russell didn't give up and was determined to find it again. Strangely though, on another attempt to find it, both he and Dr. Bovie disappeared. A few months later, Russell's car was found in Death Valley. What happened to the men is a matter of debate. Some believe it was car trouble. Others say they fled, although it's not clear if they made off with the money or would have profited much. Some believe that they even found the city again and either got lost inside or perished somehow inside. The second account of the city comes from an old prospector named White. In the 1920s, White said he was searching for gold near the Wingate Pass in the southwest region of Death Valley. He was searching in an abandoned mine shaft when the floor of the mine gave out. White fell into a labyrinth of underground tunnels. As he began exploring the tunnels, he would discover chambers that were lit with a greenish yellow glow. He couldn't determine the source of the light, but he did find hundreds of mummified human remains, and they all wore odd leather clothing. White says he came back to the caves twice, once with his wife, and another time with his mining partner, Fred Thompson. After White's story got out, a Paiute Indian named Tom Wilson came forward with his own story. Allegedly, Wilson's grandfather spoke of finding the hidden city under Death Valley quite often. Wilson noted his grandfather's account sounded similar to White's. Wilson's grandfather had discovered a tunnel system through a cave. He walked through the tunnels for several miles until he came upon a subterranean city where a group of fair-skinned people resided. They wore strange leather garments and spoke a language he had never heard. He claims that the entire city was illuminated by greenish-yellow lights that had no source. He also said the residents of the city were friendly and offered him food. Oddly, he had never seen this type of food before. When he returned above ground and told his story, very few people believed him. However, when Wilson heard of White's story and he noticed the similarities, he started to believe that his grandfather had found the elusive subterranean city. The third account comes from a book, the 1932 book Death Valley Men. This was written by an old prospector named Burke Lee. In the book, Lee mentions an underground city located in the Panamint Mountains of Death Valley. In his tale, two men named Jack and Bill were exploring near Wingate Pass when one of them fell through the bottom of an old mine shaft. The partner followed into what was described as a natural underground cavern. The pair allegedly followed a tunnel some 20 miles northwest into the heart of the Panamint Mountains. As the two men walked through the tunnels, they eventually reached ancient underground rooms where they allegedly found several perfectly preserved human mummies. The mummies had thick armbands and held gold spears. Further in the caves, one of the cavern rooms was lit up by a system of lights fed by subterranean gases, and the rooms were filled with treasure. The men claimed to have found large statues of solid gold, stone vaults, drawers filled with gold bars and gemstones. After finding the treasure, the men grabbed some of it and headed out through the tunnel. They made their way up and out the eastern slope of the Panamint Mountains. The men had planned to show the treasure to archaeologists so they could get funding and retrieve more of it. However, allegedly, the treasure was stolen by a friend, and when the men tried to find the opening of the tunnels again, they could not find it. Jack and Bill would go on and say that a recent rainstorm had altered and rearranged the landscape, and that's why they couldn't find the entrance. These men, determined to find the entrance, were last seen climbing the Panamint Mountains and were never heard from again. The interesting stories raise the question, does this underground city exist, or could it? Skeptics will quickly point out that all the people alleged to find the underground tunnels couldn't find their way back. While this certainly seems suspicious, we should point out it also seems odd that in two of the stories, the explorers went back determined to find the caverns. Although some say they could have had ulterior motives, such as securing more funding. However, it does seem a bit odd that in both cases, the men disappeared with no trace. One interesting thing regarding these stories in an underground city in Death Valley is that it seems completely plausible a civilization would choose to do this. In fact, one could argue it's more probable that cities in that region should be underground, as this would help keep a more moderate climate. Death Valley, which is around 3,000 square miles, is said to routinely have temperatures over 120 degrees Fahrenheit due to reasons like its sparse vegetation and being surrounded by several high mountain ranges. Thus, the valley seldom receives rain, as some people would say it would be too hard of a task to take on in the heat. It could be the case an ancient tribe found natural caverns and added space to them over time. There is precedent for large underground cities as well. Derinkuyu is an ancient multi-level underground city in Turkey. The subterranean city of Derinkuyu was built in the Byzantine era, sometime around the 7th and 8th century, and it's believed the city was built as protection from Arab Muslims during the Arab-Byzantine Wars. The city itself is truly remarkable, being multi-level with 5 levels, able to house 20,000 people, and extending 280 feet underground. Today, with such a massive area in Death Valley and such dangerous conditions in the area, not many people are willing to go in or even allowed to go in and explore this dangerous area. Perhaps one day someone will stumble into the caverns again, and this time choose to write down the GPS coordinates.